Hello, Tibbs Gaming here, about to open my first box of Ravnica Allegiance, so let's get started. Alright, first pack, we've got a Gore Clan Wrecker, 2/2 Riot Menace for 3 generic and 1 red. Civic Stalwart, 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn for 3 generic and a white. Quench, 1 blue and a generic for counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. Undercity Scavenger, 3 generic and a black. Ogre Warrior, when it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Undercity Scavenger and then scry 2. It's a 3/3. Interesting card. Sagittarius Volley, 2 generic and a green for an instant. Destroy target creature with flying. Sagittarius Volley deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent's control. Really good and limited against Orzhov and its Afterlife Spirit tokens. Grasping Thrall, it's a 3/3 flyer for 3 generic, a white, and a black. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. Syndicate Messenger, 3 generic and a white for a 2/3 flyer with Afterlife 1. Which means when it dies, you create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. Root Snare, 1 generic and 1 green for an instant that prevents all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Rafter Demon is a 4/2 for 2 generic, a black, and a red. It's a demon. It's got a spectacle cost of 3 generic, a black, and a red. Spectacle is you may cast it for that cost if an opponent lost life this turn. And if you do that, then when this enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. Azorius Locket. The lockets are should be used to them by now. 3 generic. An artifact, tap to add a white or blue, pay 4 in some combination of white and blue mana, tap and sack it to draw 2 cards. Angelic Exaltation, an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. One of my pre-release decks last weekend, this was a pretty good win condition, so definitely a fun card to play around with. Azorius Skyguard, 4 generic, a white, and a blue for a 3/3 human knight. Flying first strike. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-0. Drill Bit, 2 generic and a black. Has a spectacle cost of 1 black for a sorcery. Target player reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. And in our first pack, we have a mythic rare, Domri, Chaos Bringer. 2 generic, a red and a green for Planeswalker. Enters with 5 loyalty. +1, add a red or green to your mana pool. If that mana is spent on a creature spell, it gains Riot. Which Riot is, as it enters the battlefield, you can either put a +1/+1 counter on it or have it have haste. -3, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 creature cards from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And -8, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of each end step, create a 4/4 red and green beast creature token with trample. So, fun little Gruul Planeswalker there. Gruul Guildgate, enters tapped, add red or green to the mana pool, and a spirit token. Next pack we start with a Prowling Caracal. 1 generic, 1 white for a 3/1. Shimmer of Possibility. 1 generic, 1 blue for a sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Storm Strike, 1 red for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. And you also scry 1. Bring to Trial, 2 generic and 1 white. Sorcery, exile target creature with power 4 or greater. Undercity Scavenger. We already read through him once. Another Sagittarius Volley. Lawmage's Binding, 1 generic, 1 white, 1 blue. It's an enchantment aura with flash, enchant creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. Goblin Gathering, 2 generic and a red for a sorcery. Create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to 2 plus the number of cards named Goblin Gathering in your graveyard. I kept wanting to make this work at the pre-release, but I never opened quite enough. Saw some other people that played 3 or 4 of them in a single game, and it was pretty crazy. Blade Juggler, 4 generic and a black for a human rogue. It's a 3/2. Has a spectacle cost of 2 generic and a black, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. He was a pretty solid body for the pre-releases. Justicar's Portal, 1 generic, 1 white for an instant. Exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. It gains first strike until end of turn. So blink effect. Biogenic Upgrade, 4 generic, 2 green for a sorcery. Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures. Then double the number of +1/+1 counters on each of those creatures. Did not play with any of these in the pre-releases. Didn't see any played either. It seems like it could be a pretty game-breaking card. Combine Guildmage, 1 green, 1 blue for a Merfolk Wizard. It's a 2/2. Has 2 activated abilities, 1 generic and green, and tap. This turn, each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. 1 generic and a blue and tap. Move a +1/+1 counter from target creature you control onto another target creature you control. Cavalcade of Calamity, 1 generic, 1 red. Whenever a creature you control with power 1 or less attacks, Cavalcade of Calamity deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. Nice for token swarm decks. Wow. Back-to-back planeswalkers in our first 2 packs. So Kaya, Orzhov, or Usurper, 1 generic, 1 white, 1 black. For a planeswalker that enters with 3 loyalty. The +1 of exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. You gain 2 life if at least 1 creature card was exiled this way. -1, exile target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less. And -5, Kaya, Orzhov, Usurper deals damage to target player equal to the number of cards that player owns in exile, and you gain that much life. There's got to be a good deck for her. I don't know off the top of my head what it is, but it seems like a solid card overall. Orzhov Guildgate, enters tapped, white or black, zombie. Alright, we have a Rubble Slinger as our first common in pack 3. 2 generic and a hybrid red or green. It's 2/3 reach, human warrior, nothing too special. Arrester's Zeal, 1 white for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And it has Addendum, which Addendum just gives you bonuses on instants if you cast them during your main phase. So if you cast this spell during your main phase, that creature gains flying until end of turn. Shimmer of Possibility we read already. Footlight Fiend is 1 black or red. It's a 1/1 devil. When it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. It's a nice limited, blocker. Trades with any X2. So, Rampaging Rendhorn, 4 generic and a green, for a 4/4 with Riot. So it can either be a 5/5 or a 4/4 with Haste. Solid limited card there. Burn Bright, 2 generic and a red for an instant. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. Basically a Trumpet Blast. Lost a few limited games to that card, so always a solid playable. Grasping Thrall, we already read through one of them. Skitter Eel, 3 generic and a blue for a 3/3 with Adapt 2 for a cost of 2 generic and a blue. And Adapt just puts however many +1/+1 counters on it, in this case 2, and it can only be done if it has no +1/+1 counters. Debtor's Transport for 5 generic and a black is a 5/3 Thrall with Afterlife 2, so it makes 2 tokens when it dies. Orzhov Locket, 3 generic, taps for white or black, 4 in a combination of white and black to sack it and draw 2 cards. Senate Guildmage, white and a blue, for a 2/2 human wizard. 1 white and tap, you gain 2 life. 1 blue and tap, draw a card, then discard a card. So a looter effect. Angelic Exaltation we talked about. Wall of Lost Thoughts, 1 generic, 1 blue, for a 0/4 defender. When it enters the battlefield, target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. I didn't see anyone running the mill strategy for limited. To me, it doesn't look like it's really there. I don't think you can pull it off, but it probably can be done, just pretty unlikely. And we've got Amplifier, 2 generic, 2 red for a 1/1 elemental. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Until your next turn, Amplifier's base power becomes twice that card's power, and its base toughness becomes twice that card's toughness. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. I haven't seen him in action yet. Seems like he could be fun in the right deck. I don't know how competitive it could be, but fun card. Rakdos Guildgate, enters tapped, tap for black or red. And the Frog Lizard token. Hazda Officer, 2 generic and 1 white. Enters the battlefield. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It's a 3/2 human soldier. Arrester's Admonition, 2 generic, 1 blue. For an instant, return target creature to its owner's hand. It has addendum, so if you cast it during your main phase, you also draw a card. Savage Smash, 1 generic, 1 red, 1 green for a sorcery. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control. So, nice removal card in limited. Axebane Beast, 3 generic and a green for a 3/4 vanilla creature. Rakdos Trumpeter is 1 generic and a black for a 1/3 menace with an activated ability, 3 generic and a red, to give it +2/+0 until end of turn. Exposed to Daylight, 2 generic and a white. For an instant, destroy a target artifact or enchantment, and you scry 1. Titanic Brawl, an instant, the spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. So it normally costs 1 generic, 1 green. It can be 1 green if the creature has a +1/+1 counter. And its target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Another removal. Azorius Night Arbiter, 3 generic, a white and a blue for a 2/5 vigilance that can't be blocked. It's a pretty solid limited card. I don't think it'll see constructed play. but it was a lot of fun and limited. Unblockable is always fun. Burn Bright, 2 generic and a red for an instant. We already read this one. Grasping Thrall. Gyre Engineer, 1, a green and a blue for a 1/1 that can tap to add a green and a blue. So a little mana ramp in blue-green there. Spire Mangler, 2 generic and a red for a 2/1 flash, flying. When it enters the battlefield, target creature with flying you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Clan Guildmage, 1 red, 1 green for a 2/2 human shaman. 1 generic and a red, tap, target creature can't block this turn. And 2 generic, a green, and tap. Target land you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with haste until end of turn. It's still a land. Wow, another mythic. Crazy. Prime Speaker Vanifar, 2 generic, a green, and a blue for a 2/4 legendary elf ooze wizard. You can tap it and sacrifice another creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So basically, Birthing Pod on a creature. Then we have a Simic Guildgate. Enters tapped, add for green or blue, and a Spirit token. First common is another Rubble Slinger. Arrestor's Zeal. I can't remember if we did this one. It's 1 white for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Addendum, if you cast during your main phase, it also gains flying. Another Shimmer of Possibility. Feral Maca is 1 generic and 1 red for a 2/2 vanilla creature. Footlight Fiend. Mammoth Spider, 4 generic and a green for a 3/5 reach. Allow Mage's Binding. Another Goblin Gathering. Another Blade Juggler. Another Justicar's Portal. Daggercaster, 3 generic and a red for a 2/3 Viashino Rogue. When it enters the battlefield, deals 1 damage to each opponent and 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. This plus there's an instant speed card, black card in the set that gives Death Touch. It's a pretty nasty combo. Deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control, and with Death Touch kills them all. So you respond to the trigger by giving it Death Touch, and they all die. So that was a fun combo. I pulled that off just once, I think, but it's definitely fun to play with. Frilled Mystic, 2 green, 2 blue for a 3/2 elf lizard wizard. It has flash, and when it enters the battlefield, you may counter target spell. So counter spell on a body, pretty solid. And we have our first split card. It's Incubation Incongruity. You can either play it for a hybrid green or blue as a sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it in your hand. The rest go to the bottom of your library in a random order. Or, for a generic, a green and a blue, at instant speed you can exile target creature, and that creature's controller creates a 3/3 green frog lizard creature token. So, solid card, can be removal, can respond to removal and replace your guy with a 3/3. Even the incubation part, I use that quite a bit. You know, searching or card selection there. Another split card. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield for 2 white or black hybrid. Or Revenge for 4 generic, a white and a black. Double your life total. Target opponent loses half their life rounded up. We cast that once in a 2-headed giant one I did, and it was pretty brutal. It was Revival / Revenge. Gruul Guildgate, red or green, enters tapped, and an ooze token. Alright, first common is another Arrester's Zeal. Got a Slime Bind, our first of those. 1 generic, 1 blue. For an enchantment aura, as flash, enchant creature, and enchanted creature gets -4/-0. Another Rakdos Trumpeter. Open the Gates for 1 green, it's a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card or gate card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. Not a bad card, especially in limited. Grasping Thrall. Syndicate Messenger. Another Root Snare. Rafter Demon. Azorius Locket. Bladebrand. There's the Death Touch card that partners well with Daggercaster. 1 generic, 1 black. For an instant, target creature gains Death Touch until end of turn, and you draw a card. Solid card in limited. Can act as removal or combo with Daggercaster, as I said. Archway Angel. 5 generic, 1 white. For a 3/4 angel. Flying, when it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life for each gate you control. So, can definitely help late game. Sphinx of the Guild Pact. Costs 7 generic, and it counts as all colors. It has flying, and is hexproof from monocolored. It's a 5/5. Flames of the Raised Boar. 5 generic, 1 red. For an instant. Deals 4 damage to target creature an opponent controls, then deals 2 damage to each other creature that player controls if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. I never really made this work in the pre-releases. There's not a ton of creatures that have power 4 or greater on their own. I mean, there's some, and it costing 6, it was not my favorite card. And we've got Tome of the Guild Pact as our rare. 5 for an artifact. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, draw a card, and it taps for 1 mana of any color. Rakdos Guildgate, and an illusion token, which is a 0/2 that whenever it blocks a creature, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. I'm still not actually sure what makes these. Alright, we've got a Scorch Mark, 1 generic and 1 red. For an instant, deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Bring to Trial, 2 generic, 1 white. For a sorcery, exile target creature with power 4 or greater. Thought Collapse, another mill card here. 2 blue, 1 generic. For an instant, counter target spell. Its controller puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. Rakdos Roustabout, 1 generic, 1 black, 1 red. For a 3/2 Ogre Warrior. Whenever it becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. Steeple Creeper, 2 generic and a red. For a 4/2 Frog Snake. You can pay 3 generic and a blue to give it flying until end of turn. Another Root Snare. Another Rafter Demon. Another Azorius Locket. Another Bladebrand. Skewer the Critics. There was a lot of talk about this. It's 2 generic and a red for a sorcery with a spectacle cost of 1 red, and it deals 3 damage to any target. So everyone's saying it's basically Lightning Bolt. However, it's important to note that it's a sorcery. I saw a lot of people try to play it as an instant because it's a Lightning Bolt. So definitely not as good as Lightning Bolt, but 1 red for 3 damage is always solid. High Alert, 1 generic, a white and a blue for an enchantment. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Creatures you control can attack as though they didn't have defender. And 2 generic, a white and a blue to untap target creature. So, another card for a wall deck. Biogenic Upgrade. Talked about that one already. Code of Constraint, 2 generic and a blue. For an instant, target creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn. And you draw a card. It has Addendum. If you cast it during your main phase, you also tap that creature and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. And then a Godless Shrine, first shock land, white and black one. Tap for white or black. It's a plain swamp. Enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters tapped. Now then we have an Orzhov Guildgate. Ooze token. First common, Feral Maka. Knight of Sorrows. Costs 4 and a white for a 3/3 human knight. Can block an additional creature each combat, and it has Afterlife 1. Coral Commando, 2 generic and a blue for a 3/2 vanilla creature. Consigned to the Pit is 5 generic and a black for a sorcery. Destroy target creature. Consigned to the Pit deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. Another very expensive removal card, but does do its job. Open the gates. Summary Judgment, 1 generic, 1 white. For an instant, deals 3 damage to target tapped creature. Addendum, if you cast it during your main phase, it deals 5 damage to that creature instead. So, some removal there. Cerulean Caretaker, 1 green for a 0/3 Dryad. Has Defender, tap and untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. Not a big fan of tapping down 2 creatures for 1 mana. There's nothing that really synergizes with it in the set. I guess you can tap down a creature you just played, but not a big fan of the card. Chillbringer, 4 generic and 1 blue for a 3/3 elemental creature. Has flying. When it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So, I mean, 3/3 flyer, pseudo removal, not bad. Rebel Reading, 3 generic and 1 red. For sorcery, destroy target land and scry 2. Gate Colossus, fun little card, costs 8 generic for an 8/8 construct. However, it costs 1 less to cast for each gate you control. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. And when it enters the battlefield when a gate enters the battlefield under your control, you may put Gate Colossus from your graveyard on top of your library. So if you run enough gates, it gets cheaper and can theoretically come back from your graveyard. So, fun card. Swirling Torrent, 5 generic and a blue. Choose 1 or both. It's a sorcery. Put target creature on top of its owner's library, and or return target creature to its owner's hand. So, pretty expensive, but, I mean, can take out 2 creatures, cost them a draw. It's pretty good. Resolute Watchdog, 1 white for a 1/3 defender. You can pay 1 and sacrifice it to give target creature you control indestructible until end of turn. Rampage of the Clans, rare. 3 generic and a green for an instant. Destroy all artifacts and enchantments. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green centaur creature token. This card seemed really bad and limited, so I haven't played it yet, and I'm not really sure where it would be good, to be honest. Plague White, for 1 generic and a black. 2/1. Whenever it becomes blocked, each creature blocking it gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Another zombie, our first foil of the box there. Rakdos Guildgate, and an Ooze token. Twilight Panther is our first common of this pack. 1 white for a 1/2 cat spirit. You can pay a black to give a death touch until end of turn. This is a very solid limited card. Persistent Petitioners. 1 generic and a blue for a 1/3 human advisor. You can pay 1 and tap it. Target player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. You can also tap 4 untapped advisors you control. Target player puts the top 12 cards of their library into their graveyard. And a deck can have any number of cards named persistent petitioners. So this is going to be a build around. We'll see how it goes for people. Milling is always popular, and cards that you can play as many as you want seem to always be popular. So combines the two there. Another Scorchmark. Another Bring to Trial. Gift of Strength, 1 generic and a green for an instant. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains reach until end of turn. Nice little combat trick. Another Footlight Fiend. Catacomb Crocodile, 4 generic and 1 black for a 3/7 vanilla creature. Another Chillbringer. Rubble Reading. Oops. Blade Juggler. Windstorm Drake is 4 generic and a blue for a 3/3 flyer. Other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0. So pumps all your flyers' power, which is pretty good. Acrobat, 1 generic, 1 black, 1 red for a 2/3 human rogue. Has a spectacle cost of 1 black, 1 red. And you can pay 1 black to give it Death Touch until end of turn, or 1 red to give it +2/-2 until end of turn. Code of Constraint, another one of those. Lumbering Battlement, 4 generic and a white for a 4/5 vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-token creatures you control until it leaves the battlefield, and it gets +2/+2 for each card exiled with it. Partners nicely with enters the battlefield effects, or if you have a Wrath, it's a nice way to play around that. But Simic Guildgate and a Spirit Token. Got another Knight of Sorrows as our first common. Another Coral Commando. Gravelhide Goblin, 1 generic, 1 red for a 2/1 Goblin Shaman. Has 3, you can pay 3 and 1 green to give it +2/+2 until end of turn. Consigned to the Pit. Gift of Strength. Azorius Knight Arbiter. Burn Bright. Grasping Thrall. Skitter Eel. Debtor's Transport. Rakdos Firewheeler. It's a 4/3 for 2 black and 2 red. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to target opponent and 2 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. Got Eyes Everywhere for 2 generic and a blue. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. You can pay 5 and 1 blue to exchange control of Eyes Everywhere and target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only anytime you cast a sorcery. Got Fireblade Artist, which is for 1 black, 1 red, a 2/2 human shaman with haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, Fireblade Artist deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Pretty fun card. You have tokens or things to sacrifice. And at rare, we have Bedevil, 2 black and a red for an instant. Destroy target artifact, creature, or planeswalker. So lots of utility there, definitely playable. Azorius Guildgate and a 1/1 flying Thopter token. Next pack, start with a Savage Smash. There's a Vizkopa Vampire, 2 generic and a white or black hybrid for a 3/1 vampire with lifelink. Another Arrester's Admonition. Another Scorchmark. Carrion Imp, 3 generic and a black for a 2/3 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target creature card from a graveyard. If you do, gain 2 life. Rampaging Rendhorn. I think we had one of those already, but it's a 5 mana for a 4/4 with Riot. Another Chillbringer. another Rubble Reading, another Summary Judgment, Cerulean Caretaker, Bullrack Clan Crusher, 3 generic, a red and a green for a 4/4 Ogre Warrior. Can tap and remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature you control. Bullrack Clan Crusher deals 2 damage to any target. So, solid card. I mean, paying things for 2 at the cost of just a +1/+1 counter. If you have the cards to play with it, it's pretty good. Light Up the Stage, 2 generic and 1 red for a sorcery with a spectacle cost of 1 red. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. So, it's pseudo card draw, which is pretty good, especially when you can do it for 1 red with spectacle. Syndicate Guildmage, 1 white, 1 black for a 2/2 human cleric. You can pay 1 and a white to tap it to tap target creature with power 4 or greater, or 4 generic and a black, tap Syndicate Guildmage deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. And we've got Zagana, Utopian Speaker, 2 generic, a blue and a green for a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, if you control another creature with a +1/+1 counter on it, draw a card. So that's pretty solid right there. It also has Adapt 4. So for 4 generic, a blue and a green, you can add 4 +1/+1 counters to it as long as it doesn't have any. And each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has Trample. So very solid card. They're rare there. Orders of Guildgate and a 4/4 Trample Beast token. Alright, next pack we start with a 10th District Veteran, 2 generic and a white for a 2/3 Vigilance. Whenever it attacks, untap another target creature you control. So almost like giving another creature Vigilance. Prying Eyes, 4 generic, 2 blue for an instant. Draw 4 cards, then discard 2. Another Plague White. An Axebane Beast. Clear the Mind, 2 generic and a blue for a sorcery. Target player shuffles their graveyard into the library and draw a card. 2 generic, a white and a blue for an instant Sphinx's Insight. Draw 2 cards. If cast during your main phase, you also gain 2 life. Grotesque Demise, 2 generic and a black. For an instant, exile target creature with power 3 or less. Another Exposed to Daylight. Another Titanic Brawl. Another Azorius Knight Arbiter. Got a Shark to Crab, 2 generic, a green and a blue. For a 4/4 Fish Octopus Crab. For 2 generic, a green and a blue, you can adapt 1, so add 1 +1/+1 counter. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Shark to Crab, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So, solid ability there. Forbidding Spirit, 1 generic, 2 white for a 3/3 Spirit Cleric. When it enters the battlefield, until your next turn, creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless the controller pays 2 for each of those creatures. So, like a 1-turn propaganda effect. Orzhov Enforcer, 1 generic and a black for a 1/2 human rogue with Death Touch and Afterlife 1. And another mythic, that's our 4th mythic of the box. Angel of Grace, 3 generic, 2 white for a 5/4 angel with flash and flying. When it enters the battlefield, until end of turn, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. And you can pay 4 and 2 white and exile Angel of Grace from your graveyard, and your life total becomes 10. So, you can flash her in. If she dies, you can exile her from your graveyard to go back to 10. Pretty good card, though, can save you from dying for a turn. So, Simic Guildgate and a zombie token. Another Bring to Trial. Another Thought Collapse. Another Rubble Belt Runner. Or no, that's our first Rubble Belt Runner. One generic, a green, and a red for a 3/3 that can't be blocked by creature tokens. Another Rakdos Roustabout. Stony Strength. One green for an instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Untap that creature. Undercity Embrace. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you gain 4 life. 2 generic and a black for an instant. Territorial Boar. 1 generic and a green for a 2/2 boar. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, Territorial Boar gets +1/+1 and gains vigilance until end of turn. Get the Point. Another fairly expensive removal, but it's unconditional. So destroy target creature. Scry 1 for a 3 generic, a black and a red at instant speed. Watchful Giant. A 5 generic and a white for a 3/6 giant soldier. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human creature token. Mortify. 1 generic, a white, and a black for an instant. Destroy a target creature or enchantment. So definitely solid removal there. Screaming Shield. 1 generic for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +0/+3 and has pay 2 and tap it. Target player puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard, and its equip cost is 3. There's another card for the mill strategy. Rumbling Ruin. 5 generic and a red for a 6/6 elemental. When it enters the battlefield, count the number of +1/+1 counters on creatures you control. Creatures your opponents control with power less than or equal to that number can't block this turn. So, a very solid finisher. Would be nice if it had haste, but still can end the game by making all your creatures essentially unblockable if you're running enough +1/+1 counters. Those are rare. We've got Guardian Project. That's 3 generic and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. So, pretty solid and limited, and definitely going to be a card I will be considering for some EDH decks. And we've got a foil Spike Wheel Acrobat. 3 generic and 1 red for a human rogue, 5/2. And it's got a spectacle cost of 2 generic and a red. Azorius Guildgate. And a goblin token. Got a Rubble Slinger as our first common. Impassioned Orator. 1 generic, 1 white for a 2/2 human cleric. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Humongulus. 4 generic and a blue for a 2/5 hexproof. Another Gravelhide Goblin. Got our first Noxious Grudion. 2 generic, 1 black for a 2/2 Death Touch. Another Steeple Creeper. Rakdos Roustabout. Stony Strength. Act of Treason. It's a reprint that we've seen quite a bit. 2 generic, 1 red for a sorcery. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Imperi's Oligarch. 1 white, 1 black for a 2/1 human cleric with vigilance and afterlife 1. Pitiless Pontiff. 1 white, 1 black for a 2/2 vampire cleric. Has pay 1, sacrifice another creature. Pitiless Pontiff gains Death Touch and Indestructible until end of turn. So, definitely a solid blocker for limited. Give it Death Touch and keep it around. Tin Street Dodger. 1 red for a 1/1 haste. You can pay a red to make it so that it can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with Defender. Forbidding Spirit, another one of those. And for a rare, Endray's Forerunners. 5 generic, 3 green for a 7/7 boar. Has Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. When it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. Seems like a solid finisher. That's the first time I've seen the card, actually. So, Rakdos Guildgate and Spirit Token. First common is another Humongulus, another Stormstrike, Civic Stalwart. First Fairy Duelist, 1 generic and 1 blue, for a 1/2 Fairy Rogue with Flash and Flying. When it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-0 until end of turn. It's a nice little flying blocker there. Plague White, Axebane Beast, Watchful Giant. First Final Payment, 1 white, 1 black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast the spell, pay 5 life or sacrifice a creature or enchantment and destroy target creature. So, really good card for a common. Ill-Gotten Inheritance, 3 generic and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, Ill-Gotten Inheritance deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. You can pay 5 and a black, sacrifice Ill-Gotten Inheritance. It deals 4 damage to target opponent and you gain 4 life. Pretty slow for limited, but Burning Tree Vandal, 2 generic, 1 red for a 2/1 with Riot. And whenever it attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Zertog Goblin, 1 red, 1 green for a 2/2 with Riot. Swirling Torrent, another one of those. Another Resolute Watchdog. And an Immolation Shaman as our rare. 1 generic, 1 red for a 1/3 via Shino Shaman. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land that isn't a mana ability, Immolation Shaman deals 1 damage to that player. You can pay 3 and 2 red to give it +3/+3 and menace until end of turn. Azorius Guildgate and a 4/4 Flying Vigilant Sphinx token. Another Knight of Sorrows, another Slimebind, Spikewheel Acrobat. That's our first Dead Revels, 3 generic and 1 black for a sorcery with a spectacle cost of 1 generic and 1 black. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So, solid limited card there. I mean, 2 creature cards back is good even at 4, and at 2 it's really good. Sauroform Hybrid, 1 generic, 1 green for a 2/2 Human Lizard Warrior, and it has Adapt of 4 for a cost of 4 generic and 2 green. Another Debtor's Transport, Simic Locket, Grasping Thrall, Syndicate Messenger, Root Snare, Acrobat, Girl Beastmaster, 3 generic and a green. It's a 2/2 Human Shaman with Riot. Whenever it attacks, another target creature you control gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is Gruul Beastmaster's power. So it's a solid card for limited. Pump your other guys. Another Tin Street Dodger. And our second Shockland, Breeding Pool. Add a blue or green. It's a forest island. Enters, you may pay 2. If you don't, it enters tapped. Orzhov Guildgate, and a Thopter token. Another Coral Commando, Feral Maka, Concordia Pegasus, 1 generic, 1 white for a 1/3 flyer. Carrion Imp, Rampaging Rendhorn, Scuttlegator, 4 generic and 2 green or blue hybrid for a 6/6 Crab Turtle Crocodile. Has Defender, also has Adapt 3 for the cost of 6 generic and 2 blue or green hybrid. So for 8 mana, it gets 3 +1/+1 counters. As long as Scuttlegator has a +1/+1 counter on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Applied Biomancy, 1 green, 1 blue for an instant. Choose one or both. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Gateway Plaza. It's a gate land. Enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you pay 1. And you can tap for 1 mana of any color. Another Debtor's Transport. Another Simic Locket. Another Eyes Everywhere. Another Fireblade Artist. Another Wall of Lost Thoughts. Another rare split card. Warrant Warden. The warrant half is 2 hybrid white or blue. For an instant, put target attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library. And the warden half, 3 generic, a white and a blue at sorcery speed. Create a 4/4 white and blue Sphinx creature token with Fine and Vigilance. So the warrant half is great. The warden half is okay late game. Solid card there. Rakdos Guildgate and a Spirit token. Another Prowling Caracol. Shimmer of Possibility. Stormstrike. Bring to Trial. Open the Gates. Rakdos Locket. Blade Juggler. Goblin Gathering. Summary Judgment. Alright, we've got Consecrate, Consume. Consecrate is 1 generic and 1 white or black hybrid. Instant speed, exile target card from a graveyard and draw a card. Consume is 2 generic, 1 white, 1 black for a sorcery. Target player sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. You gain life equal to its power. So, Consume is a very solid card. I didn't see very many people play the Consecrate half. Oh, another split one. Incubation Incongruity, we already read that one. Regenesis, 3 generic, 2 green for an instant. Return up to 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Seems pretty solid. Haven't gotten to play with it yet, but we've got for a rare Gruul Spellbreaker, 1 generic, 1 red, 1 green for a 3/3 Riot, Trample, and as long as it's your turn, you and Gruul Spellbreaker have hexproof. So, for 3 mana, it does quite a bit. We've got a foil Rally to Battle. It's an uncommon. 3 generic, 1 white. For an instant, creatures you control get +1/+3 until end of turn and untap them. So it definitely can surprise someone on an attack, on their attack. Orzhov Guildgate and Spirit Token. Into the second half of the box, we've got a Spikewheel Acrobat, Twilight Panther. That's our first Sage's Rose Savant. 1 generic, 1 blue for a 2/1 Vedalken Wizard. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2. Rubble Belt Recluse. 4 generic, 1 red for a 6/5 Ogre Berserker that attacks each combat if able. Consigned to the Pit. Gift of Strength. That's our first Thirsting Shade. 1 black for a 1/1 Shade. Has lifelink, and you can pay 2 generic and a black to give it +1/+1 until end of turn. Another Territorial Boar. Aeromunculus. 1 generic, a green, and a blue for a 2/3 Homunculus Mutant. Has flying, and adapt 1 for a cost of 2 generic, a blue, and a green. Rakdos Locket. It's our first Skatewing Spy. 3 generic, 1 blue for a 2/3 Vedalken Rogue Mutant. Has adapt 2 for a cost of 5 generic, 1 blue. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has flying. So pretty good card there. I didn't see that during the pre-release at all, but giving your whole team flying is pretty good. Rhythm of the Wild, 1 generic, red and green. Enchantment, creature spells you control can't be countered. Non-token creatures you control have Riot. So that's pretty solid for red and green. Occult Guild Mage, 1 black, 1 red for a 2/2. Has 2 activated abilities. First is 3 generic, 1 black, tap. Target player discards a card. Activate it only when you could activate it. Cast a sorcery. 1 red, tap, and deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. At rare, we have Precognitive Perception. 3 generic and 2 blue for instant. Draw 3 cards. Has addendum. If you cast it during your main phase, instead scry 3, then draw 3. So, solid draw spell. Simic Guildgate and a Thopter token. Another Twilight Panther. Persistent Petitioners. Scorchmark. Noxious Grudion. Steeple Creeper. Rafter Demon. Zorius Locket. Blade Brand. Skewer the Critics. Oh, our first Growth Spiral. A green and a blue for an instant. Draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So an instant speed Explorer, basically. Solid ramp card. I'm interested to see what decks it shows up in. Gateway Sneak. 2 generic and a blue for a 1/3. Whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, Gateway Sneak can't be blocked this turn. And whenever Gateway Sneak deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So, I never saw him really pay off, but it seems like it could be a fun card if you're playing enough gates. Dovin's Acuity. 1 generic, a white, and a blue for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and draw a card. Whenever you cast an instant spell during your main phase, you may return it to its owner's hand. So, I mean, nice little utility if you're playing a lot of the addendum instants. Adds a little value there. Scrabbling Claws. 1 generic for an artifact. Tap it, target player exiles a card from the graveyard. Pay 1 and sacrifice it. Exile target card from a graveyard and draw a card. So a little graveyard hate. And then we've got Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. 1 white, 1 blue for a 2/2. Each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So, nice little hate bear. Kills off ramp and Cascade and other free mechanics. Practice Guildgate and a human token. First common, Arrester's Admonition. Savage Smash. Twilight Panther. Persistent Petitioners. Undercity's Embrace. Soul Reform Hybrid. Aeromunculus. Rakdos Locket. Chillbringer. Rubble Reading. Galloping Lizrog. 3 generic, a green and a blue for a 3/3 frog lizard. Has trample. When it enters the battlefield, you may remove any number of +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. If you do, put twice that many +1/+1 counters on Galloping Lizrog. So enters, grabs all the counters off the other stuff and doubles them. Pairs nicely with Simic Ascendancy. And I mean, all your adapt creatures, you grab their counters and then they can adapt again. So that's nice. Sky Tether. 1 white for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has defender and loses flying. Nice pseudo removal there. We already had a Spire Mangler. Biomancer's Familiar is a rare. 1 green, 1 blue for a 2/2 mutant. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the amount of mana an ability costs to activate it to less than 1. And then it can tap. The next time target creature adapts this turn, it adapts as though it had no +1/+1 counters on it. So really good card if you're playing a adapt deck. Probably some other uses for the activated ability cost reduction. Azorius Guildgate, and the Goblin token. Another Coral Commando, Gravelhide Goblin, Prowling Caracol, Noxious Grudion. I think that might be our first Sylvan Brush Strider. It's 2 generic and a green for a 3/2 beast. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. Frenzied Erynx, 2 generic, a red and a green for a 3/3 cat beast with Riot, Trample, and for 4 generic, a red and a green, you can give it +3/+0 until end of turn. Orzhov Locket, Deface. It's weird, you're thinking we've seen all the commons and then 3 new ones in this pack. Deface is 1 red for a sorcery. Choose 1, destroy a target artifact, or destroy a target creature with Defender. Skitter Eel, Wrecking Beast. It's 4 new commons. 5 generic, 2 green for a 6/6 beast with Riot and Trample. Depose Deploy. I have not had that one yet. For 1 generic and a white or blue, it's an instant. Tap target creature and draw a card. Or deploy 2 generic, a white and a blue. For an instant, create 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying, and you gain 1 life for each creature you control. Rally to Battle. I had one of those. Our first Sentinel's Mark. 1 generic, 1 white for an enchantment aura with flash. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+2 and has vigilance. Also has addendum. When Sentinel's Mark enters the battlefield, if you cast it during your main phase, enchanted creature gains lifelink until end of turn. And a Simic Ascendancy. 1 green, 1 blue for an enchantment. For the cost of 1 generic, 1 green, and 1 blue, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. So, alternate win condition, pretty easy to achieve. Obviously fragile to remove enchantment hate, but if you can play around that, it's a fun card. Guildgate and Beast. Another Vizkopa Vampire. Sage's Rose Savant. Rebel Belt Recluse. Carrion Imp. Rampaging Rendhorn. Lawmage's Binding. Goblin Gathering. Blade Juggler. Justicar's Portal. Trollbred Guardian. 4 generic and a green for a 5/5 Troll Frog Warrior with Adapt 2 for a cost of 2 generic, 1 green. And each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has Trample. So definitely a card you want if you're going the Adapt route. Cry of the Carnarium. 1 generic, 2 black for a sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. Exile all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. If a creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So, Gates Ablaze, another Gates Matter card. 2 generic and a red for a sorcery. Deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of gates you control. So if you're playing enough gates, it's a nice little board wipe for 3 mana. Our 5th mythic of the box, Biogenic Ooze. 3 generic, 2 green for an Ooze, 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green Ooze creature token. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each Ooze you control, and you can pay 1 and 3 green to create a 2/2 green Ooze creature token. So it definitely gets out of hand quickly if not removed, as you can use it to make more and they continue to get bigger. And a foil Watchful Giant, Gruul Guildgate, and a treasure token. First common is Humongulus, Gravelhide Goblin, Rakdos Trumpeter, Open the Gates, Deface, Skitter Eel, Wrecking Beast, Scuttle Gator, Applied Biomancy, Gateway Plaza, Vindictive Vampire. It's an uncommon. 3 generic and a black for a 2/3 vampire. Whenever another creature you control dies, Vindictive Vampire deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. Essence Capture. 2 blue for an instant speed counter target creature spell. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature you control. That's a solid counter spell. Combine Guildmage. I already read that one once. Captive Audience, that's Mythic number 6. It's weird. 5 generic, a black, and a red for an enchantment. Captive Audience enters the battlefield under the control of an opponent of your choice. At the beginning of your upkeep, meaning the opponent you gave it to, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Your life total becomes 4. Discard your hand, or each opponent creates 5 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So, real good card. Costs a lot of mana though. So, Azorius Guildgate and a Centaur. Core Clan Wrecker, Impassioned Orator, Prying Eyes, Footlight Fiend, Mammoth Spider, Scuttle Gator, Applied Biomancy, Gateway Plaza, Debtor's Transport, Simic Locket. Basilica Bell Haunt is for 2 white, 2 black, a 3/4 spirit. Enters the battlefield. Each opponent discards a card and you gain 3 life. Bankrupt in Blood, 1 generic, 1 black, a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast it, sacrifice 2 creatures and then you draw 3 cards. Collision Colossus. Collision is 1 generic and 1 red or green hybrid. For an instant, deals 6 damage to target creature with flying. Colossus is 1 red, 1 green. For an instant, the target creature gets +4/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. Rare is Replicate. Repudiate is 2 green/blue hybrid. For an instant, counter target activated or triggered ability. And Replicate for 1 generic, 1 green, 1 blue. Sorcery, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. So, pretty fun card. Orzhov Guildgate and a treasure token. Got a Thought Collapse, a Rebel Belt Runner, 10th District Veteran, Rampaging Rendhorn, Consigned to the Pit, Skitter Eel, Debtor's Transport, Orzhov Locket, Frenzied Erynx, Grow Locket, Galloping Lizrog, Knight of the Last Breath, 5 generic, a white, and a black for a 4/4 giant knight. Pay 3, sacrifice another non-token creature, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying, and has Afterlife 3. The Gates Ablaze, and Incubation Druid at rare. 1 generic, 1 green for a 0/2 elf druid. Tap to add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. If Incubation Druid has a +1/+1 counter on it, add 3 mana of that type instead. And it can adapt 3 for the cost of 3 generic and 2 green. Nice ramp there. Gruul Guildgate, Spirit Token. Prowling Caracal, Humongulus, Stormstrike, Civic Stalwart, Thirsting Shade, Territorial Boar, Final Payment, Act of Treason, Imperious Oligarch, Ill-Gotten Inheritance. We got a Sphinx of New Prov, 2 white, 2 blue for a 4/3 Sphinx. Has Flying and Vigilance. Spells your opponents cast that target Sphinx of New Prov cost 2 more to cast. Nice flyer for limited there. Sentinel's Mark. Smeltboard Ignis, 1 generic, 1 red for a 2/1 elemental. You can pay 2 generic and 1 red and sacrifice it to gain control of target creature with power 3 or less until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So basically act of treason on a body. At rare, we have Rixmati Reveler. 1 generic, 1 red for a 2/2 human shaman. Has a spectacle cost of 2 generic, 1 black, and 1 red. When it enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw a card. If its spectacle cost was paid, instead discard your hand and draw 3 cards. So, nice card if you can empty your hand and draw 3 cards. Azorius Guildgate and a Sphinx token. Got a Hazda Officer. Persistent Petitioners. Rebel Belt Runner. Dead Revels. Soarform Hybrid. Skewer the Critics. Growth Spiral. Clear the Mind. Sphinx's Insight. Grotesque Demise. And Orzhov Racketeers. 4 generic and a black for a 3/2 human rogue. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card, and it has Afterlife 2. Another Mortify. Wilderness Reclamation. 3 generic and a green for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. Seems pretty good. Mirror March. 5 generic and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip you won, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So we get the typical red, really expensive enchantment that has a cool ability, but it's also random, so tough to play. Girl Guildgate and a Goblin token. Spear Spewer. Pretty sure that's our first of those. Pretty late in the box to still be opening new commons. 1 red for a 0/2 Goblin Warrior with Defender. And you can tap it, deals 1 damage to each player. Nice Spectacle Enabler. Concordia Pegasus. Quench. Rakdos Trumpeter. Gift of Strength. Aeromunculus. Goblin Gathering. Senate Griffin. 2, and then 2 white or blue hybrid for a 3/2 Griffin with Flying, and when it enters the battlefield, scry 1. Catacomb Crocodile. Clear the Stage is 4 generic and a black for an instant. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you may return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So removal with a potential upside. A little expensive, but playable. Regenesis. Spirit of the Spires is 3 generic and 1 white for a 2/4 spirit with Flying. Other creatures you control with Flying get +0/+1, so boosting all their toughness. Cindervines is 1 red, 1 green for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cindervines deals 1 damage to that player. Pay 1 and sacrifice Cindervines. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Cindervines deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So, pretty good card. We got a foil Titanic Brawl. Rakdos Guildgate, and Human Token. Rebel Belt Recluse. Knight of Sorrows. Slimebind. Spikewheel Acrobat. Territorial Boar. Plague White. Watchful Giant. Burning Tree Vandal. Justicar's Portal. Get the Point. Silhana Wayfinder. 1 generic, 1 green for a 2/1 Elf Scout. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land from among them and put it on top of your library, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I originally read this as put it in your hand, and it seemed really good. Put it on top of your library is still pretty good, especially for 2 mana. Pteramander for 1 blue. You get a Salamander Drake. It's a 1/1. Has flying. Also has Adapt 4, which costs 7 generic mana and 1 blue, but this ability costs 1 less to activate for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. So in the right deck, you can get down pretty low. Macabre Mockery. 2 generic, a black and a red for an instant. Put target creature card from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. I like that it's instant speed, so you can actually grab something to block with. Hero of Precinct 1. 1 generic, 1 white for a 2/2 human warrior. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token. Definitely a pretty good card. Zori's Guildgate and Spirit Token. Commons are Viscopa Vampire, Sage's Rose Savant, Undercity Embrace, Blade Brand, Skewer the Critics, Growth Spiral, Clear the Mind, Sphinx's Insight, Grotesque Demise, and first uncommon is Enraged Ceratok. 2 generic, 2 green for a 4/4 Rhino. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Senate Guildmage, we've done. Tower Defense is 1 generic, 1 green for an instant. Creatures you control get +0/+5 and gain reach until end of turn. And Unbreakable Formation. 2 generic, 1 white for an instant. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Addendum, if you cast the spell during your main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures, and they gain vigilance until end of turn. So, solid card. You can save all your creatures if they're about to die, or during your turn, you can pump them all and go in for a big swing with vigilance. We've got a foil Eyes Everywhere, Gruul Guildgate, and a Spirit Token. Commons, Rebel Belt Runner, 10th District Veteran, Prying Eyes, Spear Spewer, Carrion Imp, Sagittar's Volley, Noxious Grudion, Sylvan Brush Strider, Summary Judgment, Ceruli Caretaker, first uncommon is Zerta Goblin, then Archway Angel, and a Gatebreaker Ram, which is 2 generic and 1 green for a 2/2 sheep. Gatebreaker Ram gets +1/+1 for each gate you control. As long as you control 2 or more gates, Gatebreaker Ram has Vigilance and Trample. Definitely can be a solid card in limited with enough gates. Class of the Guild Pact, 2 generic for an artifact. Multicolored creatures you control get +1/+1. It's a solid artifact for only 2 mana. Simic Guildgate, and a Beast Token. Hazda Officer, Arrester's Admonition, Savage Smash, Undercity Scavenger, Sagittar's Volley, Final Payment, Act of Treason, Imperious Oligarch, Ill-Gotten Inheritance, uncommon Orzhov Racketeers. Got a Carnival Carnage. Carnival is 1 red or black hybrid for an instant. Deals 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker and 1 damage to that permanent's controller. Carnage is 2 generic, a black, and a red for a sorcery. Deals 3 damage to target opponent. That player discards 2 cards. So, Lightning, but for an extra mana. And on a split card. Carnival half isn't bad either. Bloodmist Infiltrator. Whenever Blood Mist Infiltrator attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, Blood Mist Infiltrator can't be blocked this turn. It's a 3/1 vampire for 2 generic and a black. At rare, we have Pestilent Spirit. It's 2 generic and a black for a 3/2 spirit with menace and death touch. And instant and sorcery spells you control have death touch. So that's a pretty fun card. Give all your spells death touch. And we have a Foil Sphinx's Insight, Gruul Guildgate, and a zombie token. Thought Collapse, Spear Spewer, 10th District Veteran, Fairy Duelist, Dead Revels, Sauroform Hybrid, Cerulean Caretaker, Aeromunculus, Ill-Gotten Inheritance, Lawmage's Binding, Sunder Shaman as our first uncommon, 2 red, 2 green for a 5/5 giant shaman. Sunder Shaman can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. Whenever Sunder Shaman deals combat damage to a player, destroy a target artifact or enchantment that player controls. Seems pretty good. Gate Colossus, Smelt Ward Ignis, and Mass Manipulation at rare costs 4 blue mana plus 2x. Double X. I don't know how I want to say that, but sorcery, gain control of X target creatures and or planeswalkers. Wow, first I've seen of that. If you can ramp that up, that is really good. Simic Guildgate and a Spirit token. We've got Slimebind, Spikewheel Acrobat, Hazda Officer, Thirsting Shade, Stony Strength, Gateway Plaza, Debtor's Transport, Simic Locket, Grasping Thrall, Syndicate Messenger, Basilica Bell Haunt at uncommon, Rally to Battle, Syndicate Guildmage, 1 white, 1 black for a 2/2 human cleric, a generic and a white, tap target creature with power 4 or greater, 4 generic and a black, tap it, Syndicate Guildmage, deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. I think I had actually read that one already. And Tithe Taker at rare, 1 white, 1 generic for a 2/1 human soldier. During your turn, spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast, and abilities your opponents activate cost 1 more to activate unless they're mana abilities. It's got Afterlife 1. So a nice little tax card there. Gruul Guildgate and a human token. Alright, so we're into the last pack. We've already had 6 Mythics, I believe it was, so not really looking at one of those, but let's see what we got. Arrester's Zeal, Shimmer of Possibility, Feral Maca, Night of Sorrows, Carrion Imp, Sagittar's Volley, Catacomb Crocodile, Chillbringer, Rebel Reading, Blade Juggler, Clear the Stage at uncommon, Rakdos Fire Wheeler, Spirit of the Spires, and Verity Circle. For 2 generic and a blue, it's an enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. And for 4 generic and a blue, you may tap target creature without flying. Rakdos Guildgate and an Ooze token to wrap it up. So, great box. 6 Mythics, 2 Planeswalkers. So, no complaints there. Look forward to opening more of this set, and hopefully subscribe below to see the rest of the videos I do. I believe I have at least 3 more boxes of this, and I still have some Ultimate Masters boxes to post videos of. So, subscribe, like, let me know what you like and don't like about the video in the comments below, and thanks.